Welcome to Outside Views. Today we continue our series BRITURN, the Obstacles. And this is Chapter 3, the right of establishment and freedom to provide services. As we examine the path for the UK to join the European Union again, maybe, it's essential to understand that this would not be a simple reversal of Brexit. The UK would have to apply for EU membership as a new candidate, undergoing the rigorous accession process. And today's focus is on Chapter 3 of the Acquis Communautaire, the right of establishment and freedom to provide services, as I said. And the right of establishment and freedom to provide services are fundamental principles of the European Union. They ensure that EU citizens and companies can set up businesses and provide services across member states without unnecessary barriers. And this includes harmonizing rules for regulated professions such as doctors, engineers and lawyers to allow mutual recognition of qualifications and, of course, of diplomas. Additionally, the EU aims to gradually open up sectors like postal services to competition while maintaining universal service obligations. For the UK, joining the EU again would mean aligning with these principles and addressing the significant divergence that has occurred since Brexit. So let's explore what this would entail and the challenges the UK would face in meeting these requirements. First, let's look at the right of establishment. And this principle allows individuals and companies to establish themselves in any EU member state without discrimination. For example, a British architect should be able to open a practice in France with the same rights as a French citizen. Post-Brexit, the UK's departure from the single market created barriers for British businesses and professionals wanting to operate in the EU. Many sectors now face additional administrative burdens, such as obtaining visas, proving qualifications, and navigate complex national regulations. To meet the EU's requirements under this chapter, the UK would need to remove these barriers on their own side and harmonize its laws with EU standards. The mutual recognition of qualifications is another critical area. The EU's acquis ensures that qualifications earned in one member state are recognized across the Union, enabling professionals to work seamlessly across borders. Post-Brexit, the UK's departure from the system has created uncertainty for many professionals. For instance, British lawyers, accountants, and healthcare workers have faced challenges having their qualifications recognized in the EU. To join again, the UK would need to adopt EU rules on regulated professions, including implementing common minimum training curricula for certain fields. And this would require significant legislative changes and collaboration with professional bodies to ensure compliance. The freedom to provide services is equally important. This principle allows businesses to offer services across borders without being required to establish a physical presence in another member state. For example, an IT consultancy based in Germany should be able to provide services to clients in Italy without setting up an office there. For the UK, joining the EU again would mean ensuring that its service providers can operate freely within the single market and they bring the professions. And this would involve aligning regulations in areas such as consumer protection, data privacy, and competition law. Post-Brexit, the UK has developed its own regulatory frameworks in these areas, creating potential conflicts with EU rules. Harmonizing these frameworks would be a complex and politically sensitive process. And now let's discuss postal services. The EU's acquis aims to open up the postal sector to competition while maintaining universal service obligations. This means ensuring that all citizens have access to affordable and reliable postal services, even in remote areas. The UK's postal system has undergone significant changes since Brexit, with privatisation and market liberalisation creating a different regulatory environment. To comply with EU rules, the UK would need to demonstrate that its postal services meet the EU standards for accessibility, affordability and competition. And this could involve reversing some of the changes made post-Brexit, which would likely face resistance from some stakeholders in the sector. The administrative capacity to implement and enforce these rules is another crucial factor. The EU requires member states to have robust systems for monitoring compliance and resolving disputes. For the UK, rebuilding this capacity would require significant investment in institutions, training for staff, and a commitment to ongoing cooperation with EU bodies. And this includes participating in EU agencies and networks that oversee the implementation of these rules. One significant challenge would be the need to align the UK's regulatory frameworks with the EU's while maintaining trust and transparency. For instance, the EU Service Directive prohibits certain restrictive practices that the UK might have reintroduced post-Brexit. Reversing such changes could not only be politically contentious, but also administratively cumbersome. The alignment would also require the UK to demonstrate its ability to prevent discriminatory practices against EU businesses and workers. The political challenges can also not be ignored. The right of establishment and freedom to provide services are deeply tied to the broader principles of the single market. Joining the EU again would require the UK to accept not only these rules, but also the other freedoms of the single market, including the free movement of people, goods, and capital. And this would likely reignite debates about sovereignty and control, particularly among those who supported Brexit. Building public support for these changes would require a clear and compelling case for the economic and social benefits of EU membership. From the EU's perspective, the UK would need to demonstrate its commitment to fully implementing these rules without seeking special exceptions or opt-outs. No cherry-picking in BRITURN. The EU is unlikely to reopen its rules to accommodate a returning member. Instead, the UK would need to show that it can align with these existing acquis and effectively enforce its provisions. And this would involve not only legislative changes, but also building trust with EU member states and EU institutions. But how difficult would it be for the UK to complete this chapter? From a mere technical perspective, the UK's history of alignment with EU rules could make the process more straightforward compared to a country starting completely from scratch. Many of the systems and institutions needed to implement these principles are still in place or could at least be reinstated with some effort. However, the political and social challenges are significant. The public debate around sovereignty and regulation remains polarized, and any move to align with EU rules would likely face opposition, at least from certain segments of society and the media. So in conclusion, Chapter 3, the right of establishment and freedom to provide services, highlights both the opportunities and the obstacles of a potential BRITURN. While the benefits of seamless cross-border trade and professional mobility are clear, the process of aligning with EU rules would require significant political will, public support, and administrative effort. For the UK, this chapter is not just about harmonizing laws. It's about rebuilding trust, addressing misconceptions about the single market, and demonstrating a commitment to, yes, and they are important, the core values of the European Union. So thank you for joining me on this third step in our exploration of the obstacles to BRITURN. And if you found this analysis insightful, please like the video, please do share it, and subscribe to Outside Views for more in-depth discussions on our post-Brexit world and possible futures. Let's continue the conversation in the comments below the video, of course, as well. What do you think about the UK's ability to align with the EU's rule on the right of establishment and freedom to provide services? I really look forward to your thoughts, and as always, stay informed. See you in the next video, and one of those is right here in the end screen.